So, power creep, Doom posters' favorite subject, and character simps' biggest nightmare. Let's talk about power creep. What is power creep? Power creep is the state of a character's get lose value in comparison to the new units, not to the enemies, cause that's called countered or fall off. Basically, it is when a character drops from the ladder of top tiers by the fact they are being replaced by other units. A character that never was on the top tier is never getting power crept because he is never on top to begin with. So when does power creep happen? Power creep usually happens to starter characters as well as early game characters that were released at the start of the game. Perhaps it is done on purpose to give players a reason to play for longer times and explore the game as much as possible, which helps the devs gather more info about bugs and feedback from players to add new features and changes. And this happens to every game. For example, in Genshin, characters like Shao and Venti were considered the tier 0 characters, but nowadays you can't bring those teams to the end game content unless you use them with new characters that either buff them to today's standard. Other reasons can be the game adds new content, monsters with high resistance against element or made for a specific playstyle. Take the boss Kafka as an example. Against her, characters that are able to cleanse are more prioritized than characters that can't. So if you bring Luocha, it's gonna be better than someone like Bailu, for example. Then we have the Memo Zone meme, who prioritize dots, and we have Swarm, who prioritize characters that can deal AoE damage to the enemies. So naturally, some characters will be replaced in those modes when other characters can deal better with that issue. Other forms of power creep is by actual character release. Some are easier to use, some have extra gimmicks, and some have a better kit with less issues. Either ignore toughness or better ISP management, or have a better AoE or benefits from doing what they are supposed to do. For example, Jinny Wan needs to spam his skill and ultimate. If somehow he gets CC'd or is not fast enough, or he doesn't have enough skill points, then his damage goes to nothing. Meanwhile, Acheron is required to have 2 Nihility characters in her team, and by extension, if you have those Nihility characters, you're guaranteed to have your ultimate up as fast as possible because of how Nihility characters cast debuffs. Or Fei Xiao versus Ratio. One of them needs debuffs to proc his follow-up attacks. Meanwhile, Fei Xiao can just follow-up attack, and every time someone hits, she benefits from that and she does another follow-up. Or Ling Sha versus Luocha, where one of them is AoE healing and debuffing everyone in the team, but Luocha is only single target healing and debuff or cleanse. And this is purposefully done because the game wants you to have new characters. The game wants to give you a reason to roll on new banners. I mean, imagine if you could do everything using just Zila is at the same level as her. 2 years later, the game will become stale and there will be no reason for you to roll or get gems or do any events. So then what's the point of playing the game? For example, in Genshin, I beat the Abyss like years ago, to the point where I just stop at floor 11 and sometimes I just don't do it at all. I skip events and dailies since I don't have any reason to wish. Now I don't have Novilette, but imagine if I had him, I wouldn't even care to play the game anymore. Because why would you go in the trouble of getting a new character and farming for him and everything, and then he's just at the same level as the previous ones? And that's another point. You should look at characters as a temporary subscription or something that you order, and if a new upgrade shows up, you get that one instead, or you just upgrade the same one that you already have. It's like upgrading a PC. You do it either piece by piece or you just buy a new whole PC. And by piece, I mean getting copies or getting their weapons, best in slots, etc. The last point is Some characters are just bad, like devs just fucked up the calculations or had a change of mind later on. Like, imagine if Furina skill gave characters Bond of Life instead of consuming HP. And the sets that were released would work with the Bond of Life as well as HP loss. Like, there is only 2 characters that can use Bond of Life and a mediocre set. And imagine if Neuvillette was getting Bond of Life instead of losing HP. Actually, Bond of Life for Arena would be broken. No, trust me, they know how to make things happen. They've been making characters for years. Worst case scenario is they're gonna release a second Neuvillette. Speaking of which, this is exactly what people fear. A broken character that is so overpowered and impossible to power creep, because every new character would look bad in comparison to them, and there will be no purpose in getting any character other than that one. Now, what to do in case your character got power crept? The issue isn't as big as it seems, but the way new characters are advertised and bait posters would speak. It makes it seem as if a character isn't able to deal with the specific content as a new unit, then they are power crept or they are bad and you should replace them with the new unit. But honestly, it doesn't matter. You should know by now that every character will struggle somehow or somewhere and won't be omnipotent forever. Jade and Argenti, for example, are not even the top 5 characters for endgame, yet they are T0 for pure fiction. You have to keep in mind that characters we get in the beginning of the game are general used characters that can deal with all content at 60% efficiency, but the more the game progresses, the more niche characters get released with higher efficiency for their niche, or sometimes they grow in value when their niche gets born later on. Remember how people used to doom post Ruan Mei and Robin? Both units were released before their main teams existed, and their value was equal, but people's brain can't understand equality in 2 choices. There is always that doubt. Fueled with the interaction-seeking attitude, they start doom posting a unit within 5 minutes of getting announced, with no tangible evidence or numbers. Later on, both Ruan Mei and Robin got their own slots in different teams, and now nobody's talking about it anymore. In fact, people are recommending both of them. TLDR, all characters will be power crept, especially those who got released at the beginning. Some characters can resist power creep more than others. The game wants you to pull on new characters, eidolons, copies, constellations. Some characters will rise again when the meta changes to their favor. And remember, power creep only affects the last floors in the endgame modes. So if your main gets power crept, they only struggle in 1% of the game. And most importantly, don't start pointless arguments when someone is doom posting or undervaluing your favorite character. They just want your attention and they seek your interactions, or they are just bad at that character. So womp womp skill issue.